Great day, everyone. Today we are planning to discuss retail store online demonstrator. So the idea is to go through this online demonstrator, which is also shared as open source in GitHub, and provide the architectural approach taken and steps to get it started, getting it running, and the details. Hope you will enjoy. To just set the context, let us be clear. We are discussing about a retail store, but kind of trying to take some use cases of it and proceed. So we have taken some assumptions, we have done some assumptions like the user is already registered in the system, and idea is to start with some of the features and incrementally add to the project. So the first step is to look at login and seeing a list of products, and then adding it to the basket as next step. Then selecting a shipping address, proceed to checkout and perform payment. So when we look at high level architecture overview, it is organized into layers, one part being organized as backend and another being organized as frontend in the typical approach that we see today in many of the applications. And on the backend, which is nothing but exposing a set of RESTful services which is consumed by the front end, which is a web application. Backend uses the stack based on Postgres, Python, Flask, and SQL Alchemy as a object relation mapping concept. Flask, as you might all be aware, it's a micro framework um, exposing HTTP RESTful services. This is also reflected in the code, which is there in the backend using Python, shared in GitHub. And on top, you have the front end, which is running on top of Node.js using React.js, primarily using JavaScript as a programming language. And then we also integrate the approach of service or API testing using Postman so that we can do a test-driven development approach and continuously evolve our services and eventually the front end. So when we go further detail into the architecture of the backend, it basically has three layers like model, controllers, and routes. The model is holding all the object relation mapping to the database. The objects are made serializable to JSON using at the rate data class attribute as well. And controllers expose the methods. They are invoked from the root. Route, in fact, is exposed in the routes.py file, which is in turn being added as a rule using app.add URL rule into manage.py. You will also see the same organization in the code. So front end, when we look at it, it basically is organized as services, authentication service and product service, basically using React.js, JavaScript approaches and components where it is organized as login and product list. And these components are integrated into app.js as routes. So that is how we will see the login appearing first, and then when you log in, you go to the retail store or the product listing. So the services in turn make a call to the backend and get the response as JSON and use it to render the components. So when we look at it from interaction standpoint, it starts with login, and then login goes to the authentication service inside the React services, and then it makes a post to the authentication controller in the Python code, and then this once it is successful, it is stored in state, and then uh, the login page uh, leads to a push or to the historical push to navigate home, which is nothing but the product list component. And in the component did mount of products list, the products are loaded, and the get product list in turn calls the product service within the React services element, and then this gets turned into get request towards the product controller, which returns the JSON list of products, which is used to render the uh, products list page, which is nothing but the route slash home. So this is the backend code is stored in GitHub, this particular GitHub URL, retail store Python. And to get it started, we can use PyCharm and open PyCharm in SRC folder and set up the interpreter by selecting the project interpreter, settings, project interpreter, and creating a new environment, which is selecting the virtual environment. Once the environment is selected and interpreter is selected, set, then you can do a pip install, uh, like pip install -r requirements.txt, which comes requirements.txt is coming bundled as part of the source. So the SRC, the folder would contain it. And then we need to set an environment variable, set flask up to manage.py to tell Flask that this is the starting point or the entry point of your application. In Linux, we have to use an export. While this will enable us to get the backend running, we have to still set up the database. So when we are talking about the database, since the model is already there in the code, we just need to configure the database backend. So like you see, you can go to config.py, modify the Postgres database URI to use the correct password and username details, and save it. Once that is saved, you can run flask db init. Uh, Obviously, the flask app should already be set, like in the previous description. Environment variable should already be preset before this flask db init, which will initialize the database part. So it will create a migration related, it will start looking for migration. So then we can run the database migration using flask db migrate -m as with some comment, and run db upgrade, flask db upgrade, which leads to adding all the tables. And you will, after this step, you will see that your Postgres database is filled with all the related tables, which is includes product types, products, and user. Once this database is created, migration is done, and it's updated, you can go to the tables using pgadmin, Postgres admin, and using the interface, and update the products type table, add these entries with the IDs matching, because the IDs are used for the reference in the product types. So you see the product type ID would match with the reference here. So products table is also can also be created using the similar manner, making sure that the product type ID is matching with the to maintain the foreign key relationship, matching with the product type table. Then we could now get it started. So on executing the application using flask run, it will start as shown here, running on the port. And then what you can do is you can use Postman, and if you have used Postman, you can create a collection in Postman and define an endpoint and like this get localhost API / product, which indicates the product's um, route inside our application, and moment you press send, it gets executed, and this will work. This once it shows the products, it means your application API or the backend as part is running fine. So you can see here in we will just execute the application as well to show you how it behaves. So like you can see here, we have the PyCharm running, and the application is already running right now for us. It's Flask run. And we can also see the execution of application towards the end. So on the front end, we can the link for the React application is also shared in GitHub, and this is when then for installing the dependencies we need to run npm install, and then on npm start it starts executing the front end. So this is the URI for front end. So what we have discussed today is to the creating a backend using Python, Flask, SQL Alchemy, and Postgres, front end using Node.js, React.js, and testing using Postman. Step-by-step approach also explained here. So what we will do right now is kind of run a short demo to just get a feel of it. So you see now we have the application running. We also have the we are using Node.js, and we are using Visual Studio Code. To run the application. So moment we have the application running, You'll see we can enter the username and password, which is currently set to Joe, and login. I have not yet done the authentication in full with the database. And you will see the retail store or the products list getting populated. So thank you for your time and kind attention. Hope this application helps you to kickstart some of your interests. Thank you.